Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin Chouinard, and tonight I'm here with Glenn Willis. And the Hawks have won a couple of games since the last time we met, and now that's five total. What's going right for the Hawks, Glenn?
Defense is getting better and better. And in the fourth quarter, if you go look at their shot chart in the fourth quarter and games they win, they're often pretty ugly. But the opponent's shot chart is often just as ugly. And so even though they put up a good number of points, against the Bucks are, about average on defense, I think, in the league. But still, when they get into the fourth quarter, it's their offense is not what's getting them to the win. It's the defense. There's a lot of things that they're doing better on defense, that's kind of helping them win these games. As I keep saying, like in the offensive half court, they're still a pretty inefficient team overall. Doing a little better with Bogey back. A little bit. Jalen's. We talked about it last time. Jalen's confidence is growing, and his decision making is a little better. So you see some things that could help, that are coming along on offense. But I still think if they're gonna, they're win games right now, it's gonna really be putting their best defensive units on the floor in the last 8 minutes of the game and leaning on that.
Is If you tried to pick out some of the things about the defense that you do like, what would you highlight? Where would that start?
I just think the spacing is better. I think when the you know it's when the season started, you felt like you're watching some carryover from last year where I mean, we joked, half joked about it last year about opposing guards just getting downhill at will, and you know, no matter how good of it, you could have Rudy Gobert back there, and if there's guards going full steam right down the paint, not be able to do much. But this year, it really does kind of start with being able to put Dyson on the other team's best guard, and that takes the pressure off of everyone else. But if you watch them play, they're into their help spots a little earlier than they were, say, 3 weeks ago. Their shading is a little more proactive. When the ball handler is looking at the defense to make a read, they kind of pull together a little bit and show and kind of make it look like a very crowded kind of. There's nowhere to drive, and then the communication's better. The communication is just better on the backside, and it's kind of funny because against the Pelicans, the Hawks had a hard time keeping Trey out of low man. That was really the first game in a long time where they struggled with that. The Bucks couldn't put him. Bucks could not make him low man. Like they could not do it. And so it just looks like they're adjusting, they're correcting, they're fixing, and then their their techniques are just a little bit more sound and a little bit more proactive than they were, say, 3 weeks ago.
I would add that they've done a really good job of keeping the ball out of the middle. Like
Mhm.
occasionally, in recent weeks when things weren't going well, the ball was getting to the middle too often. Now they're more consistent in shading it off to the side, and I think that helps a good bit too. Um,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's like the video I for the Pelicans game I put on Patreon. There was a one play where Kobe was on Devontae, and Onyeka jumped, baseline side boundary slash baseline side, as if to suggest Kobe's got to push you towards me, right? And Kobe let the ball get middle, and it resulted in a wide open three. But it is strange to think like that was an anomaly. That was an exception where the ball got middle there because Kobe didn't play the right technique. And Onyeka was wanting him to play. Like Kobe's still adjusting and acclimating, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, it is impressive how much more consistently they're playing on defense right now. And it's sure like they're better when they have their best defensive unit out there. When Hunter can be help slash team defender. When Dyson's on, Shay's not playing a ton of minutes, but he's impactful. I mean, his for a 19-year-old, his technique is ridiculously sound. It is just crazy how good he is, and that's simplifying the job of Clint and Yeka, a lot, just because they're not having to rescue possession so much. I know you and I've seen you joke that like even though they won these games, the first 3, 4, 5 minutes have kind of been a mess defensively at times, and Clint
Yeah, it
has
never
kind of
seems like Clint is a mess. It just seems like everybody else is a mess.
yeah, and then they kind of figured. I don't know what's going on with that, but
Yeah,
that's something that
I thought
will
in
help.
this game early on, like, you just mentioned about Riza Shea being such a good defender, and I wholeheartedly agree. But I think there were just a couple of plays where, I think his brain was on, okay, how and where do I help? And then the ball would go back to his man. It was time for him to leave and go back out and close out. And I thought he was just taking bad angles. Like he was
Yeah,
closing out to Torian Prince's left shoulder and kind of giving him the right hand drive that he would just love to have. And I thought, in this particular game, I thought that was one problem that they had in the first couple of minutes. But it's not like that's the same problem over and over. It seems like it's just a few different things. But it's hard to argue with this starting group. It feels like they've finally put their four long defenders around Trey, and like that's just what they want to roll with to start games, and that goes pretty well. Like it seems to be a really good recipe. They're bringing a lot of firepower off the bench to boost the offense part way, but they're starting with the defense. It's a little bit. I think at some point, they'll be able to leverage that even more to kind of be on the same page in those first few minutes and try to really put some pressure on. That hasn't quite happened yet, but it's at the same time, it's not like the defense is so bad that it's digging some massive hole. It's just kind of here and there.
yeah, yeah. It's weird. I might have to go back and rewatch if they do it. If they have another rough first 4 minutes or whatever against the Lakers. We play Lakers next, right? Tomorrow night,
Yeah.
Lakers. Right. I might have to go back and rewatch and see kind of what are they not doing correctly to start the game. They seem to fix it after I don't know 5 minutes or so of gameplay. Maybe after the under seven timeout that comes, maybe there's something that they're getting fixed at that point in time. But that's something that would help them. Not be down 10. 3 minutes into the game. If it feels like it's in that, even these games they won, it feels like that's how they've all started.
Yeah. So we haven't recorded since what was that? The Charlotte game, I think was the last one that we recorded after. So, after the Pelicans game, Trey mentioned that he thought that they got a few good looks out of him being the screener.
Yep.
I mean, do you feel like this is a real and sustainable thing?
Well, I put a play on. I put a out on Twitter today. It's great in that Pelicans game. Trey screened two defenders and gave Dyson a downhill attack there. One could argue terrible defense too.
I was gonna
You-
I was gonna argue that he got away with a 15-yard holding penalty, but go ahead.
yeah.
Or
I
10
mean,
yards from the
you
spot of
have
the
to
foul.
calibrate. You have to calibrate to how the officials are calling the game, right? So, but I mean, for the 4-1 stuff that they're running with Jalen, giving Jalen a mismatch. And they're in some cases they're actually screening him to force a switch. It wasn't hard to do against the Bucks because the Bucks were switching a lot of stuff. But when they didn't want the switch, he would ghost or brush screen. Like there was a play I put on Twitter that um Orion was on Jalen and they didn't want AJ John AJ
Green?
Green. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want
AJ
AJ
Green.
Green on? Why wouldn't you want AJ Green on Jalen? That seems like a fine matchup to me, no?
He's stronger than he's a number. I think he's an emerging defense. The Bucks like him as a defensive prospect.
Okay.
I think Torian just doesn't move laterally, as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Green's not some all-world defender at this point in time, but he's got good size and strength, and
Yeah.
he works hard. Maybe that's it, but clearly the Hawks didn't want the switch. And
Okay.
he goes to go screen. He cleared out and left him on Torian and Jalen. That's the one where Jalen got to the rim and mashed it right on top of Brooke Lopez. And so they are using him more and more as a screener. And it's really funny to me because in the player capsule series I did on Brad's podcast over the off season, one thing that he asked me was, "What else can Trey do?" You know, and I used the example of the Raptors running 4-1 pick and roll that whole series against the Warriors. What was that, 6, 7 years ago now, whatever. and how Lowry basically was a ball screener that whole series, and that was one of the most impactful kind of things that they did. And and here you now you got the Bucks running 4-1, and he's doing the now Kyle Lowry's got a little more body to work with, or
A
one
little
might say a
more
lot more body to work with.
backside.
But I mean, but I had so much I mean, I know I kind of joke a lot about Lowry's flopping and all that sort of stuff on Twitter. Sometimes I'm half joking. Sometimes I'm pretending not to be annoyed when I am annoyed. But
He's still a basketball genius.
I had so much respect for the all the hard grunt work he did in that series to help them win that, it was really impressive. And so it is interesting. You see Trey. They're also running some like horn stuff with Trey. Normally the horns is the two bigs. About the free throw line, but a lot of teams are running big guard, and the Hawks are running big guard, and Trey is setting a screen, clearing out, so they'll be getting a flare screen from the big after the attack. And so they are like getting him into a lot more stuff where the ball's not in his hands, and he's even though he's not shooting the ball well right now, he's still creating gravity. And they're still responding to him. And so, I had a little back and forth with some people on Twitter today when I said I think Trey is sacrificing a lot on offense right now by doing a lot of stuff without the ball, giving the ball up early against traps and hedges and stuff like that. And some people are like, that's not sacrificing. That's just something he should have been doing all along.
I
But it's
mean,
to me, it's a big adjustment. To me, it's a big
yeah.
adjustment.
I mean, he's sacrificing one way or the other, but at the same time, to me, it's just more of he's out there with at least in the starting lineup. He's out there with Daniels and Riza Shea and Capella, and it's like that's just not a whole lot of offense. There's not a lot of like natural spacing in that lineup, and so if it's not sacrificing now that he's doing this 4-1 stuff with Jalen when they're out there with this group, um, then it was sacrificing just to get in these lineups. Like, it might be something that's actually helping him now. Maybe it's not a sacrifice, December 4,
Right.
because it's actually going to help him do things a little bit more easily than he would have on November 4. But then he was sacrificing November 4 just playing in these lineups because he just has to do so much for them on offense in these lineups.
Yep.
And, it's resulted in these constant, every time he runs an action, there's two bodies at him. And this is just another way for them to do something where they can't just put five sets of eyes on him.
Yep.
If the
Yeah.
ball's in Jalen's hand, you can't be looking at what Trey's doing. Like you
Yep.
you got to keep your eyes on Jalen. And so, I just maybe it's less of a sacrifice and more of a good thing, but just playing with all these defense first players, it puts a lot of stress on Trey's offense. And so if this is some way to make that a little bit better for him, maybe this is actually a benefit to Trey, but I'm all for it because you he's Trey's not the only high caliber offensive player doing this. There are a lot of guards like Trey that
Yep.
do this, and so it's good to see him doing it. And like it's a lot. Like if it comes to him setting screens that he has to hold, that's a little bit of a physical burden. But even if he's slipping it, like that's just you're not going to be able to send two bodies to him when he slips a screen. Like you're going to get one out there, and so maybe you get him in space with one defender and a little bit of a seam if the pass is on time or on target. Like that's good enough. Like that's good. That you should be doing it, and you know really I think there's no reason not to do it even more than they've been doing it. Maybe they're doing it now like 4 or 5 possessions a game. If that's 10, like that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I personally think it's a big adjustment. Other people can disagree, and that's
Well,
fine. But
adjustment is different. I was saying sacrifice, maybe not quite a sacrifice if he's already sacrificed, but adjustment, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. But I think in my view, some of the sacrifices to create space and reps for other players. I think they're trying to move the offense where it's not so individually dependent on Trey, and that takes growing Jalen. That takes growing Dyson some. That takes giving Ricochet a little bit of of something to work with, and so for me, I feel like it's an invest. We can choose whatever word. Each individual can choose whatever word works. An investment. adjustment, sacrifice. I think all of those. There's some parts of all of that for me, but I think the concept is to get Jalen to the point where if you just want to throw doubles at Trey the whole game, have fun, you know. Because Jalen's going to go attack 4-on-3, and Jalen's reads are getting better. He still makes some mistakes, you know. He's still very early in this role, but they're just gonna they're
Some of
gonna
his 50-foot lob passes have been really terrible.
yeah, and some blind passes where there's I guess he expected his teammate to kind of step into a seam or whatever, and but I mean good ball handlers and creators won't make that pass unless they know it's there, you know. But Trey's doing. I mean, Trey's passing angles are different as a result of what they're doing this year, and he has his games where he's turning the ball over more than you like. And some passes that they get, seems like they throw about 7 passes a game that were like that had absolutely no chance of connecting. And so I mean, to me, it's impressive that they've won 5 in a row and they beat some good teams. When there's still a lot they can clean up, and for me, what that comes down is they elevate. I mean, good teams that win games consistently elevate their defense in the fourth quarter. That's what you have to do. You can't count on every shot going in. You can't count on putting up 38 points in the fourth quarter. Everybody's tired, all that sort of stuff. But what teams do is they elevate their defense, and that's what the Hawks have been doing. But I do think Trey is giving a lot of room for some other players to come along.
Yeah.
I still wonder if Landry and Quinn think they have enough offensive capability on this roster. I think Hunter really helps the way he's playing on the second unit right now. You know, but it does feel like they're one really, really good shooter. Adding one really, really good wing shooter to the rotation, if and when they're able to do that, would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like I've asked you this question 3 times now, but it feels like a constantly evolving situation. Uh, how did Onyeka look in that most recent win? Does he look right? Is he part of the defense that's kind of closing these games and holding up well?
Well, I mean, I think Quinn is swinging the center position based upon what scheme he wants them to lean on going late, right? I mean, you love to have Quinn out there for his rebounding and just his back line, all the work that he does organizing, anchoring, and all that sort of stuff. And Nyeka's not as quite as good at that stuff, but like Nyeka got switched on to Dame in the fourth quarter, and Dame couldn't do anything with him. There's that one possession where Clint can't do that. You know, and so for me, when you want to, a lot of times late, if you listen, right, ball goes out of bounds, 6 on the shot clock, then we'll start yelling 15, 15, 15. You'll hear that ATOs, they'll yell 50. That's 1-3-5 switching. When you hear 15, it's 1-3-5 switching, right? And he will do that. He's very much, much quicker to do that when Nyeka's on the floor than when Clint is on. So they play more chasing over screens, drop, so a lot of the stuff that Quinn's good at. And so the other part of that is when another team starts shooting the ball off on the 3-point line, one wrinkle that Quinn goes to is he'll start switching just to kind of take that shooting space away as opposed to chasing over, given that pocket, even if it's only half of a second of the pocket there. And when Yanyeka's on the floor, they'll get into that 1-3-5 switching and take some of that away. So for me, it kind of depends on the matchup and the situation. But overall, I mean, I thought Nyeka was active and good. I mean, it's hard at his size to play down there when Brooke and Giannis are down there with him, all the time. It's hard for him to create, good shot angles, all that sort of stuff. Good to see him knock down a three from the corner. Felt like the first time in weeks that had gone down. And so I still think, I know I sound like a broken record, but I still think the main thing for him is just consistency. And I think he's been inconsistent this year. The good games have been really good. The bad games have been pretty ugly, And so I think it's just a matter of him settling in. And he's playing with Jalen a lot instead of Trey. I mean, what center wouldn't want to have all their minutes to Trey?
Right.
And
Yeah.
Jalen's running a lot of it. Kobe's a really inexperienced point guard or
Right.
combo guard, whatever you want to call him. And I think that's impacting Onyeka a
Yeah,
lot.
I do too. There was a play in that game where Kobe had the ball at the top and Bogey was in the corner, and Onyeka went to set the screen for Bogey to lift out of the corner. But Kobe gave it to Bogey at exactly the second that uh, exactly it's the second that he got behind sort of that Onyeka screen. And so effectively it became like this two-man action for Bogey and Onyeka as he was lifting across the screen. And I think it, whatever it was, it ended up being great because the timing was just so good because, you're reacting to Bogey shooting. He's coming behind a screen, so everybody's trying to worry about jumping to that. And then all of a sudden, Onyeka's getting behind. And I felt like that was, something that was really, if you could replicate that, that's something that I thought was really good because now he's working with bogey spacing and they whatever it was, they got a great look out of it. And I thought that was really impactful. But I also thought like you mentioned, like what's he gonna do? Um, when Giannis and Brook are out there, but I thought he was really great when Giannis went off the floor. I felt that's like when the Hawks took over. Like
Yeah,
the
he
Bucks
was
owned the
good
first
against
quarter, and
Portis.
then
Yeah,
when Giannis went out, it was Dame, Brook, Lopez, pick and rolls, and Onyeka was just all over that. Like
yep,
he's like, I got this, and he
yep.
was really impactful. So he loses a little bit in that he's not playing with his point guard. But if the other superstar is gone, like his defense can suddenly become that much more impactful.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And it's still funny. Is like you watch him play, and because like he's been such a high level shot maker and for his position, an impressive shot creator. And you watch him and you're just like, I know he can play better. But you still look at it and he's like, he's got 13 points and 8 rebounds. He's still, but there's like 3 or 4 plays that are just like, oh my, like that shot goes in. Like, why is that shot not going? But then you look at the box score and he's a solid game. Now everybody wants him better than solid for him, you know. But a decent floor game from him when he's kind of still right now. It looks like he's trying to fill things out with the new group he's playing with and the new scheme and all that sort of stuff. And I do think Bogey's presence is going to help him find more space down there. He's doing a better job of when he gets a guard on him. He's sealing him. The problem is, can Kobe get in the ball? Can Jalen get in the ball? Those are the. It's harder. Where Trey could get in the ball, and Dyson's a good passer. In that regard too. So it's just still a little clunky, and I think some of that is costing Onyeka like some of the rhythm he's previously had playing with more experienced guards.
Yeah, I don't even remember who the bigs were, but some of the entry passes in that Pelicans game were embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean they were like the play was there, but the passing accuracy and timing was just bad.
Yeah. The placement too, like just not like you got to read the positioning and the bodies and where is the seal? What side do you have the advantage on? And it was like
Yeah,
you didn't see any of it if that's where you threw it.
yeah, and that's where like some teams like if you don't have like they'll cut someone to the nail and become the intermediate passer and simplify the play. Maybe the Hawks can lean on that a little bit more.
Just what do you make of sort of the bench overall? It seems like well, I know it doesn't seem like I know that the bench has outscored the opposing bench in every single one of the 5 wins.
Yeah, yeah. Bogey makes everything easier. He makes
It's
everything
that simple.
easier. And then Hunter is playing. I mean, honestly, it's so hard to like for any of us have expectations on is Hunter going to play the rest of the season? Is he going to be physical? Probably. I mean, probably makes sense to sit him on some back to backs and to just take care of him because he's making way too much of a positive impact right now to really kind of risk, in my view, pushing his minutes and not giving him a break. We might have an opportunity. But, I mean, honestly, what he's doing right now is like, I mean, it's only been 3 weeks since he's been back, 2.5, something like in that time frame.
10
But what
games.
he's doing right now is sixth man of the year level play. I mean, just statistically, now I know the broader media is likely not paying that much attention to the Hawks and Hunter and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not saying I think he's going to win the war. What I'm saying is his level of play is kind of at that level where,
Yeah.
you know, um, and it is making a huge difference. And being able to close with him instead of Ricochet. And people, I know people were like, someone on Twitter asked me like, why did Ricochet get pulled? Like the, they wanted Hunter and Jalen and Clint, or Hunter. They wanted size against Lopez and Giannis, and Ricochet is just really not in that match. Ricochet is just not strong enough to close, in that sense. But yeah, I mean, Hunter and Bogey on the second unit. I mean, remember what the second unit looked like last year, Kevin? It was
No, I don't. It's going to take me a minute to actually think
it
about
was
this.
rough. It was rough. It was DeJounte, maybe understandably
I just remember that
he
there were
trays off the
never any
court.
forwards.
Yeah, exactly. Trays off the court. So this is my time to run the offense and kind of, get my shot and all that sort of stuff. And it was rough. Having Kobe able to lean on Jalen and Bogey and Hunter is huge for Kobe. I mean, that is just huge for to have veterans on that second unit is so it's just really takes a lot of pressure off of Kobe, you know. And he this was a rough game for Kobe in terms of like driving right into Brooklyn, a couple times, and maybe that's where you pull up for 15 and or whatever it is, but he's got to play to learn. Feedback loops are important.
Speaking of comparing last season to this season, before we leave this, the whole idea of the bench. And by the way, I wrote about the bench this week, so I'll just plug myself. Go read that. Um,
Yeah.
but before we leave this, like last season, there were essentially, I think, two Hawks who played three segments a half or three stints a half. Like they would start the game, check out early, come back for the middle, check out again, come back for the end of the half. And I think it was Trey and Jalen. And now it's just one. Jalen's the only one doing it. So, how much of an adjustment is that for him to be in the situation where, okay, now, I'm kind of the man with the second unit. Like, is he, we talked about the bench and it's literally those players that come off the bench, but what about how Jalen has fit in with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this before, but what I see is a group of players that are empowering Jalen and just, do your thing, and grow. And, he's running pick and roll, and he's running increasingly like a play on from a like that New Orleans game where he had two screeners working in opposite, like most of the year he's been one screener, simple reads, et cetera, et cetera. But now they're throwing more complex kind of screen action at him, and he's reading the first screener than the second screener and what space is open and all that sort of stuff. But he's just. Every week. I think he's doing great. I still think the where he gets into trouble is when he gets too deep with the basketball without a plan and ends up with the defender kind of behind him and not really having a passing angle. That's the one. I think that seems to be the one mistake he's making two or three times a game is kind of throwing away his passing angle. But I mean, he's really improving, a ton. It's going to be interesting to see how far his game gets this year. In terms of cleaning up turnovers, more precise passes. His east-west passing is all on point. Like everyone has, never has an issue with east-west passing. It's that north-south stuff and reading the timing of the help defender, behind the play, all that sort of stuff. But again, he wasn't doing that before this year. So I think he's doing awesome. And I think if they keep playing good defense, they can continue to invest in development reps on offense and the players that are worth investing in. And Quinn is and the staff are walking you know, a fine line between developing and trying to win, developing and trying to win, developing and trying. I mean, I think Jalen played 40 minutes last night. I think, um, because Ricochet couldn't close the game. Normally, Jalen goes out like maybe 3 minutes into the fourth quarter, comes back with 5 minutes, and something along those lines. And he was only out for like a minute because Doc sent Giannis in early, and so Quinn had to get Jalen in early. But, I mean, I think he's doing great.
We got a couple of Western Conference heavyweights coming in with LeBron and Nikola Jokic. what are you looking forward to out of the next week until we get to the NBA Cup knockout round with the Knicks next week?
Yeah, I mean, the Lakers are not working on defense right now. The thing that I wrote a little primer on this 4 game stretch and put it on my Patreon, right? And but the one thing they're super skilled 4 and 5 when Davis is on the floor, right? And obviously LeBron's a great passer. I don't think it feels like LeBron hasn't made a 3-point shot in a month or something. I don't know if I've read that right, but he's like 0 for like a lot. And so it seems like the vibes are bad with the Lakers right now. Um, but they're not working on defense. When you watch the play, they're not working hard enough on defense. I don't know what that's about. JJ's got to be going crazy. Um, and maybe he can get Nate McMillan to do something about throw a fit or whatever. Not really Nate style, um, but the thing that they're a master at on offense is playing inverted offense and putting your small defenders in help positions and low man and all that. They're really good if you let them at getting your defenders in the wrong spot. So that to me on defense, that's the number one thing to watch against the Lakers is keeping Trey clean, all that sort of stuff, right? If Trey's trying to tag AD when he's rolling to the rim, or right, bad news. The Nuggets are top five in points off turnovers. So to me, I think they're second. I think they're second. That's a danger, Will Robinson, for me because the Hawks are like third or fourth most opponent points off turnovers. So that's tough. And then the Nuggets are also top five in 3-point percentage. And that's been so to me, like statistically speaking, the Nuggets are a tough matchup in that way. And I mean, what Jokic throws at you is what no other center in the league can throw at you in, too. Um, and so I mean, so they're gonna have to play really composed basketball and cut down the mistakes against the Nuggets. The Nuggets, the Nuggets have been underperforming, I guess, wins and losses to what their fans expect and what have you. If you turn the ball over against the Nuggets and don't defend the 3-point line, they will blow out the Hawks. So that's the thing for me. The Lakers will decide to play hard or not play hard or play kind of hard or whatever, and you can't match their lack of energy, or if they decide they're going to give 50% or whatever. Hawks have to kind of do their thing. So that's the way I'm looking ahead of the next 2 games.
All right. Is there anything else you want to hit on before we head out? Did
I
I
think
forget anything?
I think fans would love a Don Barlow update. What do you think, Barlow down in College Park?
Well, he's down in College Park. He's starting. He's starting alongside Mo Gay. But he gets the reps in the middle. Like he's playing center. Mo Gay is essentially playing uh, power forward. He's kind of defending a little bit like the Robert Williams role where they'll have him guard a corner shooter and he can kind of be like a second rim protector out there with Barlow, which is probably a good thing because he's probably a little bit better of a rim protector than Barlow is. In the most recent game, JD Davison went off for 46 points. Uh, and I thought, the sort of the second line of defense at the rim wasn't that great. It, I mean, it's one of those games. Like, first of all, it was the 11 o'clock bust the kids in for the field trip kind of game.
You had to
So
be
those
so
are
happy.
always going to be a little bit weird, right?
Yeah.
And the Skyhawks had some guys that were quite comfortable on offense in the first half. So, I don't even think he took a ton of shots, but there was a stretch in the third quarter where I think the Skyhawks kind of pushed out to sort of a maximum lead, and what it was just feeding Don Barlow the ball. Like he's a very skilled post scorer. Like you get him the ball down low, and he can pretty much do every kind of post move that there is. His feet are just really nice, and so there was kind of a little bit of a third quarter takeover for him. The Skyhawks built a really big lead, and the Celtics, just because Davison was hot and that I would say the Skyhawks defense was kind of like a B minus for the game. Like they clawed their way back in, but they were disrupting the Skyhawks offense. Like they changed defenses a lot. They went from kind of a standard kind of defense to a 1-3-1 zone for a while. And then when they, got kind of into desperation mode late, they were just blitzing the heck out of everything. Like it was a really impressive kind of blitzing defense. And the Skyhawks barely held on. But, Barlow looks good. It's a weird team. Like for a G League team, like for first of all, like the G League is like better than it's ever been. Like compare the G League now to what it was 5 years ago, and it's like,
Yep. They
quadruple
play
A
they play real
basketball. It's
basketball.
really close to NBA basketball now, where I
Yep.
don't think that was the case. Like it might be better than some of the leagues in Europe now. I don't know. Like it's really high level stuff,
It
and they've
is.
got a
Yep.
deep team. Like they've got Daquan Plowden coming off the bench. They've got Tony Bradley coming off the bench. Like Jarkel Joyner coming off the bench. Like he's not an NBA player, but he feels like a starting caliber G League player, and he's coming off the bench for them. So it's like, they've almost it's you. I'll say this, and they'll have six guys hurt next week, but it's almost like they have too many players at the moment. They're playing like a 10-man rotation, and it feels like the rhythm and the timing is a little bit wonky, but um, Barlow looks great on offense, and these are good reps for him to keep practicing his defense.
Yeah. 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 I shared like with him. I think it suggests maybe the concept is on defense, get a guy who has the offensive skill set and teach him how to play defense. Because to take a center with an offensive skill, it's almost impossible to add offensive skill. It's basically impossible to do. You know, but you could take a guy who has the ability to move, has some agility and all that sort of stuff, and possibly teach him to play defense well enough. And it seems like what they're doing with Marlowe,
Yeah,
essentially.
and
So
he's just he's also just not that big, like
yeah,
and not that explosive. So it's not just like a learning thing. Like he's kind of like a 6'10", pretty good athlete. He's not, he doesn't have like a Kongwu's athleticism, and he doesn't have Clint's size. Like he's kind of big. So it would feel, like when he's playing defense, it kind of feels like Larry Nance or somebody like that playing center, like older Larry Nance. Like, even if he's fully up to speed, it's never like he's going to be a dominant rim protector, but you're trying to get him to the point where, he's just not making mistakes and using every advantage that he can.
yeah, appreciate the update.
All right. All right. Well, we'll have to do this again soon and let's see if this win streak keeps going. And I guess we'll just say goodnight, Bob.
Good night, Bob.
Thanks, Glenn.